English translation, 376th contact. Thursday, 3rd February 2005, 22.57 hours.
As promised, I'm coming earlier today because we still have a lot to do together. Salome, Edward, my friend.
I also wish you peace and wisdom, dear friend. You are right that we still have a lot to do. Here alone I have 14 A4 pages from Hans-Georg to read through, which you can do on your own, because I have already read everything. Now the only question is whether you want to do it right away or postpone it until the end of our conversation.
The matter is important, which is why I will devote myself to it right away. But what about the fact that other members of the group also write something about it? Because as I see here, Hans-Georg has worked out all 3 topics on his own. Actually, we wanted other group members to write about their views and opinions as well as their experiences. We also had the idea that 2 or 3 female members should have the written word, together with perhaps 1 other male group member.
I have not yet been able to submit the whole thing to the whole group, because the last reports from 372 to 375 are still in the computer and therefore not printed out, so they have not been distributed to the group members. They will not be printed out and handed out until next weekend. That will also be the time when I can present your wish to everyone.
I see. Good. I want to read Hans-Georg's paper now.
That is going to take some time, an hour for sure, if not more, whereby I do not want to disturb you. Look here, I got some good chocolate from Hani, from Eva's mother, which I have to share with you, so if you want to help yourself, please. In the meantime, while you read, I can do some work on the computer, these letters here.
Thank you. I happily indulge in the chocolate. Pay Hannah my thanks. And while I am busy with Hans-Georg's paperwork, you can very well do your job.
I will see you later. Do not let me distract you.
So that was the last page. All in all, I think Hans-Georg's writing is very good, but I would like to work with you on a few points to revise and perhaps complete the whole thing. Of course, only insofar as Hans-Georg agrees with it, which is why you should ask him about it, because in the end, it is his work that he has to decide about. However, I would like to be allowed to add a few more things, which he probably did not mention because he simply did not think about it. I would also like to insist on our request that 2 or 3 more female group members make an appropriate description of the position of women in Figu and the position of Billy in Figu, which would also be desirable if a male member could also write some more about it. Otherwise, the whole thing would be one-sided.
Just 1 hour. We will clarify this on Saturday at the General Assembly, where I will of course also present your request to Hans-Georg. I am sure there will be some more members who will take care of the work.
There can be more people than I have mentioned in the number of people who can make the statements.
We shall see. By what date should the whole thing be together?
It would be very advantageous if everything could be done quickly.
So it should be done the day before yesterday. Let us see. Maybe we can get it done even faster.
When I see how fast Hans-Georg worked,
we will make a brochure out of it, but it should not have more than 55 or 56 A5 pages. Otherwise, there will be problems with stapling the booklet.
I did not think of that.
We will see to it that everything stays within reason. But tell me, dear friend, there were elections in Iraq concerning the government occupation. Now that the U.S. Americans down there are the war powers and are also in charge, I wonder whether everything went right in the elections. Because I think that if there can be enormous election falsifications in the USA, then it could be the case in Iraq under the U.S. regime.
With which you are unfortunately right, because in fact there were partly very serious election falsifications and other irregularities in the election process, which on the one hand were caused by machinations of the U.S. occupation, and on the other hand by religious machinations of the Sunni and Shiite fanatics.
This is pretty much how I imagined the whole thing. Now what about my question, which I asked you recently, regarding further predictions? I thought you said you made various predictions because I asked for them.
That is right, if you mean the things you asked us for. For our part, we do not seek to make predictions in order to know the future.
You said on the 14th of January that you made predictions only to shake up the Earth humans, but that you were only making calculations and probability calculations for yourselves. Is it always like that?
No. For certain things we probably maintain foresight, but this is to be called a rarity. Because our calculations and probability calculations are very accurate, because they are based on the principle of logic, which we bring into application regarding the causes of actions and events, etc. These calculations and probability calculations are extremely accurate. Quetzal and I have consulted with some others and have come to the conclusion that it might be useful in one case or another if we were to make a foresight and have it recorded in writing in the form of our contact conversations through you. We have, however, come to the conclusion that we will no longer be making such forecasts for a number of years, but only for the short term, at most for a few weeks or a month or two.
At least something, all the same. This is another wise in which benefits can arise.
You really should not get your hopes up. You know the stubbornness of the Earth humans, who as a rule can only be taught by harm. Furthermore, your mission is constantly being hampered by obstacles based on the fact that our predictions are called unfair machinations and denigrated, which is also done by various state military secret services that monitor you, as we are well aware. This is also the purpose of the Figu Internet material in its entirety, which provides a great deal of welcome information for the secret services as well as for certain federal police departments, authorities, and government agencies.
But it has always been, ever since I went public with my mission. I also know that fiches, files about me have recently been created in Bern. Somehow, it seems, certain people in leading and secret service positions, etc. do not trust me, although I am in no wise politically or criminally active, etc. It seems as if these poor lunatics are afraid that I might be politically revolutionary and subversive, for which, however, there is absolutely no interest on my part, because on the one hand, I am terrified of the slimy political machinations, and on the other hand, my path is that of fulfilling the mission and spreading the teaching of the Spirit to teach the Earth humans about creational natural truth and love and peace, inner and outer freedom and harmony resulting from it. And this task alone does not allow me to be politically active. It could not be reconciled in any wise.
That is correct. Nonetheless, for some time now, attempts have been made to slander you again, and the schemers are happy to use any means necessary to do so, including by certain secret services who interfere in certain internet forums and maliciously slander you. The same happens, however, also from the purely private side, namely from prejudiced know-it-alls, as well as from ones of morbidly low intelligentum, who put themselves up as knowing experts in the matter of unidentified flying objects, which are generally called UFOs, although they have neither the slightest knowledge nor the necessary understanding in these things. They have no knowledge whatsoever of your person or of all your circumstances of any kind, just as they do not know you personally. Nevertheless, they slander and denigrate you, and this alone only by other lies and slander from malicious adversaries who use you and your mission to make themselves appear great among their fellow humans. Indeed, they are of the erroneous belief that they could shine before their fellow humans if they could insult and slander you in newspapers. on radio and television and on the internet, and through public lies of deceit, falsehood, deception, and sectarianism. All in all, these humans are of sad existences who have no sense of honor, dignity, or self-esteem, and who suffer from inferiority complexes that they cannot control. That is why, by slandering and denigrating other people, they try to put themselves in the limelight and make themselves appear to be something that they are not and can never be in their weakness and selfishness and in their low intelligentum. In this delusion, they think they are big and strong and think they are masters of themselves and their fellow humans, while in truth they are very poor creatures and too cowardly to face the real truth. This has been the case since ancient times, as it is still the case today, and already at all times the true heralds of truth have been denigrated and slandered exclusively only by all the ones of low intelligentum and of weak intelligence, which proves that low intelligentum and weak intelligence have not yet died out among the earth humans to this day, namely among those who deny, slander, and denigrate you and the truth. Those who do so prove in every respect and in public themselves what a profound low intelligentum, weak intelligence, and consciousness-based lowly developed they still are, and have not yet found the way to real and healthy normality. The truth is that these are extremely unfortunate humans who are still deprived of rationality and intellect in large numbers, and thus also of all values of the virtues, as well as of the sense of honor, dignity, and self-respect. For these reasons, these humans are also not of the value of having their utterances and actions denigrated and slandered, but of having all their actions simply disregarded and responded to in no wise. Low intelligentum, weak intelligence, lies, slander, and denigration, namely, cannot be combated by justification, but only by a dignified and rational silence and through a disregard. This also takes the wind out of the sails of those elements who, in their low intelligentum, insignificance, unimportance, and in their consciousness-based limitation and poverty, as well as in their simplicity, irrationality, and stupor, do not notice how they publicly expose themselves and show their weakness of intelligence.
That has been my motto since childhood, and I have always done well with it. All those who have at all times stood up to me as slanderers, liars, cheats, and denigrators have ultimately cut their own flesh and made themselves impossible in the eyes of their fellow human beings. Already my parents, as well as Father Zimmerman, and all my wise teachers taught me to be silent and not to defend myself against slanderous attacks. I have always done well with this, never got upset, and was always able to fulfill my duties in any case. Very early on, I learned never to denigrate other people, to maintain my dignity and reverence for every human being, to live according to the truth, to be honest and never to hate a person, even if he or she does the most evil and wicked thing to me of which a person is capable. I have also learned through this that all those who commit slander, lies, deceit and disparagement, etc. against other human beings expose themselves and reveal, with alarming clarity, what rotten elements and ausgeartet those who have gotten very badly out of control of their good human natures, they are in their thoughts and feelings as well as in their actions, and consequently, they can only be met with regret. Such humans openly prove to the whole world what a miserable character they have, and in what dishonor and disgracefulness they live and are not able to create their own self-esteem.
Very unfortunate humans.
Exactly, but let us not go there. Look here, this is a booklet that offers many books, many of them dealing with conspiracies that are supposed to be taking place on the earth through various organizations, through the banks and governments, and through associations and religious sects, etc. If one would believe all the conspiracy theories in this regard, then the whole world would have to swarm with conspirators. Book titles like The Nutritional Lie, The Soup Lies, Out of Devil's Pot, The Medicine Mafia, The Iodine Lie, Healing Forbidden, Killing Allowed, Remote Viewing, Fake Science, Skull Bones, A World of Evil, The Insiders, Secret Politics, Banks, Bread and Bombs, Hands Off This Book, The Invisible Power, Investigation Forbidden, Shadow of Power, The Sages of Zion. AIDS means to contain overpopulation, and much more nonsense is spread through books, so that fear is stirred up, and false information is spread, and the readers believe all the nonsense. Look here, this is one of those advertising brochures for such nonsensical books.
I am familiar with many of these incredibly stupid conspiracy theories spread by books. In fact, they are just absolute nonsense, put into the world by irresponsible book writers, and thus unsettle the people who read these silly things. But the Earth humans do not hold much by way of the real truth, because in their ignorance they want to be cheated by untruths, by lies and slander, because the real truth seems to them to be too banal or too fantastic.
The whole thing is a vast profiteering enterprise, where the business of fear is thriving. Clever and irresponsible book writers with often very well-known names stir up immeasurable fears in people through their crazy conspiracy theories. In contrast, these irresponsible elements write nothing of value in terms of how to prevent wars and diseases. It does not occur to anyone to write about the truth of the fact that overpopulation is the main cause of all the present misfortune in the world, that false and incompetent rulers are at the helm of the state, driving the states into financial ruin, invading foreign countries with their armies to murder and destroy thousands of times over. Nor do they write about the fact that AIDS is becoming more and more widespread and more deadly, as you said the other day, but on the contrary. Such scribblers claim that the UN or secret services, etc., have invented this epidemic to reduce humanity, etc. Nor do they write anything about the fact that the meaning of the human being's life is based on consciousness-based evolution, that he or she should learn about it and follow the creational natural laws in order to create love, peace, freedom, and harmony among all peoples and human beings.
Unfortunately, this is so because there is no financial profit to be made and because the real truth does not want to be heard. This is also the case with the AIDS epidemic, which is actually becoming worse and worse because a new form of AIDS has been spreading for some time now, reaching the acute and fatal stage after only a few weeks.
Yes, that is what you were talking about. Until now, it took a number of years after the infection with the HIV virus before the epidemic became really acute and reached the inevitable deadly outbreak.
The Earth humans have learned nothing from the horror, because for a long time they have become completely irresponsible again with regard to the epidemic, which allows it to spread more and more rapidly. In addition to the HIV, other bacteria and viruses are also spread through unscrupulous sexual acts. And thus diseases are also spread, through which HIV mutations also arise, from which the newest form, which you mentioned, also arose some time ago. However, the fact that the HIV virus is transformed by other viruses and bacteria is something of which terrestrial medical scientists have no idea, because they are still very ignorant of virology and bacteriology.
The Earth human being is only really in the initial stages of development, which is why it may be some time before scientists are able to recognize the real connections between the HIV and other viruses and various bacteria. But what I wanted to ask now, about 2 weeks ago I asked you about a prediction of a U.S. attack on Iran. Has nothing come up yet?
Such clarifications require a long time span. As we noted, although some unfinished plans have been in existence with the U.S. government for some time, nothing concrete can yet be deduced from them. Nothing has yet been investigated with regard to an incursion of U.S. forces into Iran, because such investigations are very lengthy and really do take a great deal of time. What has already been clarified with regard to Iran is another moderately severe earthquake measuring 6.5 on the Richter scale. The places that will be damaged, and where again many human lives will be lost, are well known to you from your travels through Iran, namely in the area of Zarand. More than 40 villages will be affected by the extensive destruction.
Yes, I know the area well. I also had acquaintances in several villages there. When will the quake be?
Already on the coming 22nd February.
Soon the time has come for the Pope to put on the papal black wings, and then to fly away from the earth in a nosedive into hot climes. He will not receive the white wings of an angel. If I remember your foresight correctly, then it will happen that on the 22nd or 23rd or so of February, he will try to take off for the second time within a short time, but he will not succeed, because he will be given the wrong little wings again, which is why he will have to try on new ones later, which will really allow him to fly underground, where he will either have to shovel coal or polish the central heating in Hades. His time will come, however, when he will no longer be able to jump off the Grim Reaper's shovel and pay his respects to the cuckold, or Gebelefritz, Billy's word, meaning more or less, the guy wielding the pitchfork. It is not my wish that he should die, because I make fun of him, because he is a hypocrite who makes fun of his believers, because he does not believe all the nonsense he preaches. His only concern, as you yourself once said, is the power he can exercise over the believing Catholics. Besides, as I have said before, it is a disgrace that this man does not resign from his office, but instead, plagued by illness, clings to it adoringly and allows himself to be adored, half dawns in his religious machinations, only slurps his religious nonsense and slobbered all over everything. He has a very long death, and this is damned undignified when you look at everything closely. He belongs in a nursing home for a long time, but his papal craving for power and the greed to be worshipped as an alleged representative of God is greater than all rationality. Besides, I think that the Pope will probably wield the scepter over the period of his office, and thus determine whether he wants to resign or not. But all the decrees of the last few years, which were allegedly thought up by him, are in reality not from him, but from the curial officials, etc., because he himself has not been able to invent all this nonsense for years. And what I wanted to ask you, popes are not allowed to be dissected or examined when they are dead. Of course, since the emergence of the papacy, this has encouraged the possibility that one or the other has been cut off from life, which was also the case with Pope John Paul I in the last century. In the past 2,000 years there have been a great many popes in power, and I ask myself whether, in addition to John Paul I, others have been killed by clerical officials. If so, then I only want to know the number.
It is a strange idea. The putting on of wings and thus escaping from the earth, as well as the idea of shoveling coal and polishing central heating, but you remember correctly our prediction concerning his last days. But what does Gebelefritz mean, I do not understand. Regarding the murders of popes, yes, there were more, and in addition to John Paul I, 13 other popes were murdered by high clerical officials.
Gebelefritz, well, Geibeli, that is simply a small fork. In this case, a fire fork, which the Fritz swings, whereby this Fritz is supposed to be the prince of hell, whereby there is neither Gebelefritz nor hell, because both are only imaginary.
Interesting. Is the expression Gebelefritz part of the official Swiss-German vocabulary?
No, of course not. The term Gebelefritz comes from my word creation.
Oh, I could have recognized that myself. But the name is humorous and I like it, so I will add it to my vocabulary. Well, what you said about the Pope's illness and behavior, etc., I agree with you. The whole thing is simply an unworthiness without precedent, as you say. Also, with regard to the decrees, I must say that everything in relation to these papal machinations of recent years is indeed as you have said, for the decrees have always been, as a rule, products of the highest curial ministers. Even in the good times of the Pope, also with other popes, many decrees were created by the curia forces and declared to be papal works. This is evident from our observations, which have been made of the papacy since it was established. So these are not observations that are only related to the Vatican or based on suppositions.
It has also been a number of years since you talked about the Pope's demise, and said that he will live into the third millennium for a number of years. This has also meant that the prophesied end of the papacy has been postponed in relation to the last two popes. Many humans have also become wiser, which may also contribute to the fact that the old prophecies, which proceed from a Third World War, with the next one prophesied for 2006, which is to find its origin in the Middle East, do not have to be fulfilled. The danger of this still exists, so it could still be possible that such a war could break out next year, unless the wings of U.S. President George W. Bush are clipped or some other sick lunatic presses the red button. If such a war does break out, then George W. Bush is the only one who is the real originator of it, and he is the only one who is under the authority of all those who are shouting for and encouraging this warmonger. In spite of everything, however, there is still hope that the future will turn out well, which is also to be hoped for between 2010 and 2015, as well as for other times in the more distant future, for which equally gloomy prophecies exist. If the whole of humanity finally becomes wiser and stops the mad warmongers and reduces overpopulation to a reasonable level by means of a rigorous birth stop, and controls the powerful of the world itself, and takes the rudder out of their hands, so that they can only act according to the will of the people, then there is a real and good chance that peace, freedom, love, and harmony will finally be established on the earth and among all earthly humanity. But if you have observed everything in the above-mentioned relationship since the existence of the papacy, then it should be 1938 years since the first actual pope, Linus, if you leave out Peter. If we add to this the time of Peter, always according to the assertions of the Catholic Church, then another 44 years would have to be added. The Vatican itself became the permanent residence of the popes only late. If I am still correctly oriented, the Vatican is not a part of the city of Rome, but an enclave with the Pope's residence near St. Peter's Church on Monte Vaticano. Up to the 14th century, the bishops resided in originally quite modest buildings, mainly in the so-called Lateran. In the 9th century, because of the Saracen invasions, everything was walled up, and the whole thing was then called Leonstadt. It was probably in 1377, when after the return from the exile of Avignon, the Vatican was made the permanent residence of the popes. It was Pope Nicholas V, if I am not mistaken, who planned in 1455 to 1477 or so a new building of the St. Peter's Church and an own Vatican City. Wait a minute here. I can look it up in the encyclopedia, right? It is true what I said. There is also some stuff there, if you are interested.
Of course, with regard to the threat of war, which is predicted with a starting point in the Middle East, the chances are not very good at the moment, because the American warmonger President Bush is not only flirting with a military intervention in Iran, but also in Syria. Nonetheless, it is to be hoped that the right steps will be taken to break the power of the U.S. president when the relevant population groups and states rise up against him and his wartime actions.
So, under Pope Sixtus IV, the Sistine Chapel was built. Under Pope Julius II, the Belvedere, located on the northern hill, was connected to the palace in St. Peter's Square. Raphael and his school created the frescoes in the stanzas and loggias under Pope Leo X. Sixtus V had the present residential palace and library built, and Pope Alexander VII, 1655-267, had the grand staircase between St. Peter's and the Damasus Court Scala Regia, built by Bernini. P.L. Nervi created the audience hall in 1966 to 71. Most of the building is occupied by the Vatican Museum's Vatican collections, the Vatican Library, and the Vatican Archives. For the paintings, the Vatican Picture Gallery was built under Pope Pius V, 1932.
Interesting remarks, but they are familiar to me. But a refreshment of knowledge does no harm.
Raphael, who was called, that was actually Raffaello Santi or Sanzio, the Italian architect and painter, right?
That is correct.
And Bernini, was that the Italian architect, sculptor, and painter Gian Lorenzo, whose real name was Giovanni Lorenzo?
That is also correct. You have studied their history?
No, they are only known to me from history as builders, sculptors, painters. I do not know their history because I never tried to learn anything about it. But tell me, Ptah, if there are other things concerning world events in the near future that you already know about? I only mean something important.
From special forecasts, I know the following. At the moment when the Pope is in hospital for the second time, Saddam Hussein's half-brother, Sawabi Ibrahim Hassan al-Tikriti, will be arrested in Iraq. It will be the same time that Russia, through a treaty with Iran, commits itself to supplying fuel rods for nuclear power plants, which is against American interests. This will be such an act of irrationality on Russia's part that it may result in conflicts of interest with the U.S. But so far we have no forward-looking data on this, only possibilities.
How does the weather actually work in Europe? Can we expect to have a real winter again?
That will be the case. Our meteorological forecasts are very accurate, and we operate them for Earth as well. Yes, there will be a real winter in the next few weeks, with lots of snow and very cold weather, but it will not be possible to measure it properly until mid-February, when it will be really cold, with temperatures dropping to 34 degrees below zero, until the 12th of March, after which it will become rapidly warm and move towards spring, but with the great melting of the snow beginning, which will lead to flooding again. Not only Europe will be affected, but also other continents and countries far south. But what else will happen is the following. Terrorist elements will again disrupt Israeli-Palestinian peace efforts with new suicide bombings in Israel from the 27th of February onwards. The same will happen in Iraq, in Babylon's capital Hilla, when on the 28th of February, a suicide bomber detonates a car full of explosives, which he drives into a large crowd in front of a hospital, killing more than 140 people and seriously wounding many. In the first 10 days of March, it turns out that the Kremlin's mortal enemy, rebel leader Aslan Maskadov, is killed in a sudden anti-terrorist special action. This is far enough. Now I would like to discuss these things with you.